Don't put me in free speech jail, you mod cops. Hello.
Oh, hello. Am I on stream?
Hello. Yes, you are on the sounds.
Hello, everybody. Hello, Jack.
Hello. Um just so I can check, everybody is their audio okay?
Everyone hearing me all right?
I can turn
Test
you up
one,
a
two,
little bit.
three.
You can say something?
Hello, hello. One, two, three. One, two, three.
There we go.
Test, test.
I turned you up a little bit.
Cool. I'm gonna have to look away from stream because your vocals not matching the picture is really throwing me off.
It's all good. It's all good.
Yeah, I'm literally was just streaming through Twitch's politics, and you were the top number of viewers, so thought I'd jump in and
Wait, are you shitting me? I was the top number of viewers in politics on Twitch right now?
yeah, number one.
What the fuck? What?
I assume Hassan's offline, so
I guess. I only have 472 followers, so I'm not sure how that happened. But okay. I'm okay with it. I'm not complaining.
yeah. Well, in terms of live right now, it was so.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you for giving me a reason to honk my horn, you know?
No, anytime. Yeah, so I would consider myself, well, I'm very libertarian.
Mhm.
I assume you're in America.
I
given
am, yeah,
that-
yeah.
Yeah. So I'm UK, so it's 5 something crazy in the morning here.
Oh my gosh, why are you still up?
I stayed up to keep track of your election because I'm an idiot and I have not
Uh,
managed to fix my sleep schedule.
I gotcha. Yeah, we're all in the same boat over here. Just
Yeah.
you're in a
Well,
different
2
time
days
zone.
on the trot, waiting for them to make a call.
It would
Meant that we
be
were quite firmly up to like 9 a.m. for I was like, okay, this ain't happening tonight, both nights.
it would be really nice if we could just get our shit together over here and call it, but
Yeah,
apparently it's
definitely.
not going to be easy this time around.
But yes, so my contention with socialism in general, obviously
Hmm.
I don't know where you stand exactly,
Yeah.
is I would consider myself a libertarian. I base my morality on the premise of well-being, which I think is heavily, not entirely. I'm not a full extremist anarchist libertarian,
Hmm.
more of a minarchist, is that freedom is a good principle to stand by to create lots of well-being, and I find historically and in general socialism to be antithetical to that pursuit, that it limits the individual, which therefore creates a limited well-being, which is why I'm against it.
Okay.
So if
Yeah.
you'd like your thoughts on that, or why you disagree or agree or whatever, let's go.
Well, so I guess my position is just that is kind of, I guess, almost the opposite. Is that socialism in fact increases well-being in society and promotes more freedom in society, and it might be that we just have different perspectives on what exactly constitutes um, good freedom, I guess, or a good like I'm trying to remember the actual term for it. I believe like the difference between positive and negative freedom might be
Negative freedoms being weirdly named the ones that almost all of us would agree generally
yeah.
are a good thing, and then positive freedoms being the ones that generally, we're obviously talking in massive general terms with a lot of these things, but generally leftists would advocate saying
Yeah.
are they are rights, whereas I would generally call them privileges.
Yeah, so like for example in the United States we have like a constitution that says, the
Yeah,
government's
I'm a big constitutionalist. Yeah,
guarantees you the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And generally, I'm in favor of policies that would ensure that everyone does indeed have a right to at least all three of those. Like, I can't guarantee anybody happiness, right? But I can at least promote policies that would enable them to pursue happiness more effectively.
yeah, no, I'd absolutely agree with that. That's why, as I say, so I'm not a full anarchist in that regard because I do believe some degree of governmental control does allow there to be more freedom than
Hmm.
if there wasn't. So, if there was no government, we would get an Alexander the Great situation where we would therefore get a stronger tyrant coming in type situation. So,
Hmm.
there are things in which I think government does increase freedom in the sort of paradoxical way. I'm not blind to that fact.
Yeah, and I mean,
But we
like,
probably have very strongly disagree on where that level is, would be my assumption.
yeah, probably. Like I tend towards more. I think I have a tendency more towards like a libertarian anarchism kind of outlook on life, but my initial position on all of this is that I don't think that actual anarchism or even actual communism are attainable within any reasonable like time span that would be like within my lifetime. So I generally advocate for market socialism as something that maybe possibly we could achieve in my lifetime.
Okay, so if we were talking communism,
Mhm.
aside of it being, in your view, unobtainable, I would say it not desirable, which would probably be the difference there, right?
Right.
So
Well,
that
can you?
kind of sets up the difference as the relevant thing.
Often I find though that a lot of people operate with very different ideas of what socialism and communism are.
Okay, sure. So do you want to lay down what you want to be referring to? That? Sorry, I'm not meaning
Yeah.
to cut you off.
No, no, no. It's okay. So, for example, there are, depending on how you implement socialism and how you implement communism, there are a whole range of different types of these things. And to clarify my position, I'm an evolutionary market socialist. So basically, what that means is that the evolutionary part is antithetical to revolutionary. So a revolutionary socialist would be someone who is willing to take over the state via violent means, any means necessary. Whereas an evolutionary socialist is it wants to take the state via the mechanisms of democracy.
Okay,
Um,
I've never heard that term before. Yeah, it's
yeah,
an evolution being applied in that way. Is that a coinage of yours, or is that a
no,
reappropriation? Or
it's actually old. Like a lot of people are like, oh, socialism was invented by Marx, and it's actually an old idea that predates Marx. And so a lot of this theory was something that was around when Marx was around. Um, and so this is, by the way, where a lot of schisms within early socialist thought really kind of came about, was the difference between, well, should we pursue revolution or should we pursue evolution? And
so can you give me slight more clarity on what you
yeah,
mean by evolution then? Because whenever I use the word evolution, I always use it in the biological sense,
yeah.
meaning descent with modification. So
Hmm.
I'm just curious how that would apply to a political standard.
So the evolutionary stance is just that you want to work within an existing structure to evolve it, um, whether that's slowly or quickly over time, towards a socialist model. So
Okay,
you're taking control of the state via the means of democracy in order to transition to a socialist system.
sure. Okay,
Whereas in revolutionary socialism, you say fuck all that, and you get your guns, you
get
get
a
your
piece.
bombs, and you take the state. And this has been something that largely in history a lot of states have gone for instead of the evolutionary approach. Um,
Sure.
so like the USSR, big prime example. Mao, big prime example of this. Cuba, another example of this. And I just tend to think largely the issue with this approach tends to be not that I'm averse to violence, because I think that, for example, the United States emerged from a violent revolution. I'm not against the use of violence for revolution. However, I tend to think that the effects overall have been largely negative, and that maybe we need to try a peaceful approach because there's more inherent stability to that. And this is something that I think we need. We largely need everyone to get together on and kind of agree on the basic principles of it.
Sure. So, but if we're not even agreeing on the goal being a good goal, the
Hmm.
means by which you attain it, like, sure, we can say there is a difference in moral value in is murdering everyone okay or is getting everyone on board. There's a clear distinction there. I'm willing to grant you that. No problem there.
Yeah.
Or to as a lot of people will blazon sort of some of my words now I can't remember the real word, sort of lazily say like, oh well, communism killed this many people. I'm not just going to saddle you with other people's
Yeah.
viewpoints or
Like,
anything like that. I'm not going to do that.
okay,
But if
thank
I'm
you. I'm
disagreeing
glad we
with you,
can skip that boring debate
exactly,
because like here's one of the truths of like world history to anyone who's studied world history on a large enough time scale, which I have. There is a whenever we adopt new political systems, there are systems that succeed and fail, and the failures of capitalism have had a very long time to be kind of fade into obscurity, and we have capitalism to a degree that it works fairly well. at least for the people it works well for. The issue with socialism, we don't have as many case studies, I guess, you know? We don't have like a hegemonic power that's like adhering to that. So to kind of circle back around to your original question, like what is socialism, what is communism? On a very basic level, socialism is when you have workers control the means of production and when you decommodify a significant portion of an existing economy. And then if you go further towards communism, on top of that, you have the decommodification, or not the decommodification, the dissolution of the state. So those are what these ideas are supposed to be. The issue is that in most of the cases where you've seen revolutionary socialism take hold, like the USSR, like in China, like in Cuba, oftentimes the taking of the state has wound up being where these revolutions stop. So, for example, the socialists took power in the USSR, and then they had to fight World War I and fight off an invasion from Allied powers after that happened between World War I and World War II. Then they had to fight World War II. And then Stalin was in power by then, and Stalin was just like, you know what? This thing that we have now, it's socialism. You know, we have socialism in one state. And from that point on, that has kind of become like, there has been a conflation between authoritarian dictatorship and like highly centralized economic planning and essentially almost I'm almost done.
Finish up it,
And state capitalism, like for example largely what China is now, an extremely effective capitalist enterprise, but it is on a level that is managed by the state. And so these things I would say are not socialism or communism, since they do not fulfill the extremely basic tenets of these two ideas.
Would you say that the people who lived there at the time would call it socialism?
I mean, I would say so, though largely I believe that that's shaped not by the actual definitions of the terms, but largely by the propaganda of the various nations involved. So,
okay,
like I feel like it's kind of analogous of saying like, well, the Nazis were socialist because they had National Socialist in their party name, and like that's not an argument that is, I think, very good.
Yeah. So my question was going to be, so in the middle of it, you when I tried to cut you off, it's just because I like to when I pick up a point, I'm very bad at retaining them.
Oh, sorry.
No, that's why. It was because you mentioned authoritarianism and you kind of said it as a passing thing, and so I'm wondering if you also would regard that as a negative comment in general. Authoritarianism equals bad.
Yes, I am extremely against authoritarianism.
Okay, so following that, my statement. Sorry, I'm not trying to cut you off. I'm just trying to get to the. So my issue with socialism isn't, as I said at the start, is that I think the freedom is what leads to the well-being, right? If that's what I care about. If I believed or could be convinced of the opposite, I would change my viewpoint on socialism. That's the thing that I would need, right?
Right.
So it's not that I uphold freedom as important first. It's that I believe it leads to the well-being. What I believe under socialism tends to happen is we tend to get this collectivist mentality that tends to come with it, and that leads to an authoritarian regime in general by its nature. Whereas if you value the individual first, it's very hard, or that there's a buffer there towards saying, hey, total power to these group of people, because you're already holding the individual as the sovereign thing and not the collective.
Can I ask you, what are you pro-democracy, or do you think we have like a better system of representation?
Well, I tend to go with Churchill's stance on this. I'm not even sure if it's actually a real quote attributed to him, but the democracy sucks, except it's the better than all the other versions, all the other methods we have of doing things. So I tend to be pro-democracy in the I think everything else is worse kind of way.
Yeah, so I agree with that, which is, by the way, why I think that socialism is not antithetical to democracy, because at its core, socialism is about giving workers control over their workplace via democracy, and
Sorry, could you say that one more time so I can properly retain it?
at its core, socialism at least half of the tenets of socialism, workers controlling the means of production, is about introducing a democratic element to the workplace. And
So is it your position that workers don't currently have the ability to own their own means of production?
correct. I mean this in a sense that like a lot of people who call themselves capitalists don't actually own the means of production. They don't actually own capital. Instead, they work as wage slaves for other people who do own capital.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, no, I mean, I refuse to join the workforce in that major regard for that reason. I stand against that entirely. Yeah.
Yeah. And I view that the current hierarchy of modern business as largely tyrannical. And so my position on this is that we should adopt worker co-ops or have systems that over time transition us to a predominantly worker co-op system. Largely because worker co-ops are democratically run and operated. Now, how you might implement this varies from depending on like the industry or the size of the worker co-op or all of this. But one of the great things about worker co-ops is that we have plenty of data on them already, and they already exist, and they work extremely well. In fact, generally they work better than our existing private businesses.
But under capitalist systems, right?
Right, under a capitalist model, which is why I think it is an ideal way to transition towards a socialist system.
But I'm saying they work well under a capitalist system. Do they work well under a socialist system? Like, isn't it the holding the individual sovereign that protects those individuals' rights?
I mean, I think that in a capitalist system, the individual's rights only go as far as how much money they have, right? Like, for example, at least in America, for example, I can't speak to the UK, obviously, but
Oh, you're free to. I might speak to the US if it ever comes relevant to the conversation, so don't hold back.
But in America, we have a criminal justice system, and you are entitled, if you get like arrested and put on charges, to representation in court. So if you aren't able to procure yourself an attorney because you're poor, you are assigned a defense lawyer, you're assigned representation. And now these public defenders are largely extremely overworked. Some of them are juggling hundreds of cases at one time. And your ability to defend yourself in a court of law is significantly hampered compared to that of somebody who has the actual money to pay bail, pay an attorney, etc. So the degree to which your personal freedom it can't be infringed upon by like the state or other things is largely determined in a lot of capacity by how much money you have. And I would like to transition to a system where that's not necessarily the case.
Yeah, no. So I would actually, to a degree, agree with you that well, to where it's relevant, that yes, the money does buy you that, and I don't think I tend to take the sort of naturalist position of things, which is that I think a lot of people who oppose my viewpoints tend to take the viewpoint of things like, oh, it's good if I can have healthcare, right? And I agree with that, that healthcare is a good thing, but I don't know what about the nature of the universe entitles someone to it. And that's where I tend to stumble over these things. So you're saying money buys someone a good lawyer, right?
Right.
I agree with that, but I'm not sure what money isn't supposed to be able to buy you.
Well,
So
I'm not really invested in the idea of what money is or is not supposed to be able to do, because money is largely a social construct, right? Like we created it. There's not like it's not if humanity ceased to exist, money wouldn't also continue to exist. It would just be paper or gold.
Well, value exists. Value exists to us subjectively, right?
Right, subjectively, yes.
But so the value exists. I understand that the money is something we created, but the value isn't something we created. It's something that we inferred.
But that's part of my issue. Like, I don't think that we should base our freedoms off of this thing that we're inferring, and that some people have more of arbitrarily based on the nature of their birth than other people.
So let me ask, because I think this might be where, well, let's see if this is where we disagree. Do you think, I agree with you that the nature of a lot of people's birth is what dictates a lot of their outcome, right?
Mhm.
I would say America, however, is the country that has done more to create more flexibility of your the what do you call it? The situation of your birth being the least important,
Um,
right?
I
Would you agree with that, or would you say that like
I
other places
I
have more freedom to move within the economic ladder?
I would uh I would say that there are other places that have more economic freedom. Primarily, like I believe I don't have the data right in front of me right now, but I believe I've seen data in the past saying that Nordic countries generally have a lot more income mobility than in the United States. However, I think that we can, at least in the United States, we can kind of dispense with this notion that like economic mobility is inherent to everybody. You know, you can do well no matter who you are in America. Like, um, there's a reason, for example, that like black people are disproportionately poor in America. It's not because they have a uh, bad culture, whatever that means. It's not because they have bad genetics. It's largely because there's a sociological phenomenon whereby if you are born into a poor family, you're more likely to die poor. If you're born into a rich family, you're more likely to die rich.
Yeah, but that's
And
actually we're agreeing with that. I think America has the least of that, though. Is my point.
well, but like there are other countries that have far more income mobility. Like if this was true, then I think we would see, for example, we wouldn't see in America anyway, we wouldn't see this disparity between white families and black families in the same city where black families have 1/40th the amount of wealth of white families.
Hold the line for 1 second,
Yeah,
literally 1 second.
no worries.
Sorry, battery on my wireless headset died.
Oh, it's all good. It's all good.
um, yeah, I mean, so although it was never perfectly equal, I would say that in general the data seems to suggest that blacks and whites had it fairly similar around the 1970s. And I'm not an expert on this. I'm in the UK, not the US, but that's my understanding. And if I'm wrong, then I'm wrong.
Yeah, that
But my
I would
understanding
I
was
would
that
say it's not correct, but yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
If anyone in chat wants to pull something up, show me I'm wrong. But my understanding was that they had very similar sort of rates of divorce and similar rates of marriage and kids raising with both parents and all those types of things. And a lot of that being changed in, I think it's like the 60s, 70s, or 70s, 80s. I don't know off the top of my head, and I don't want to claim I do.
Mhm.
Is what has had a lot of a knock-on effect in that area.
Oh yeah, I mean, I'm not going to say
And
that.
I blame the war on drugs on that. I don't
Yeah,
blame black people. I blame the policies that targeted them disproportionately.
exactly. Yes, yes. There were a lot of policies passed in the 70s and 80s that, and the 90s, disproportionately targeting black people. However, there's also like a lot of there's a reason why Donald Trump can go on television these days and talk about how he's protecting suburban women from low income housing, and people are
I just not
able.
pay much attention to what Trump says, to be honest.
I
I
mean
don't
that
think anyone should.
well, it's totally fine, but it's easily understood in the American context as protecting the white women from black people. Like that when he talks about defending the suburbs, that's explicitly what he's talking about.
Protecting them how? I'm not following.
Oh, there's a trope like from like way back when is that black men are going to rape your white women.
Oh, right, okay.
It's
Sorry, in the UK, the black and white populations are a lot more assimilated in the UK than in the US, so we don't really have that same kind of.
yeah.
A lot of the racist tropes that go on in the US don't map over the same way.
Yeah, I mean like here it's like we like cinema was like revolutionized by Birth of a Nation, and that film famously has a scene of a black man raping a white woman and then the KKK heroically coming in to save the day.
That film gets brought up anytime anyone's talking about like Proud Boys, anything like that. I have no idea what it is.
Oh, it's like it's the like
Seems to be like a main part of like American culture that everyone knows this thing.
yeah, it's like a big piece of cinematic history as well because like it used some revolutionary effects for the time, and it was like the first film shown at the White House, and like
Right.
it's just like the kinds of myths that then spread from that, or at least seeped into it to influence its creation, have been around for a very long time in America. And this is why, by the way, like a lot of people, when I bring up like black people are disproportionately poor compared to white people in the United States, a lot of people balk at that idea here. But it's 100% true. And it's largely a byproduct of the fact that we freed black people from slavery 150 years ago, roughly. My math is bad. And then
I'm not going to try and do like, ha, gotcha, you're out by 10 years. I'm not here to do that, you know.
No, I appreciate the good faith discussion. And then right after that, we had Reconstruction, which is when like black people started getting elected into office, and that was largely possible because Northern troops occupied the entire southern area of the United States for like 10 years. And then the South was like, hey, you don't need to occupy us anymore. We'll totally not be racist. And the North was like, cool. And so we pulled all the troops back, and then the KKK started, and they started like lynching black people all across the South, and generally dissuading people from voting, and killing sitting black senators. And then we get into
we've strayed quite far from socialism,
right? But I promise it'll get back to it. But
okay,
then,
cool.
But then we have the era of Jim Crow, and then only in the 1960s do we get to the point where black people are enfranchised again by the civil rights movement in the United States. So we have all of these things, and then people come and say, well, America, you have equal opportunity. It's the land of opportunity, you know, but we have entire segments of people here who have been economically oppressed to serve as a working class for centuries. And they still are to this day.
I would cut you off there if that's okay, and cut you off at the word centuries. I agree with everything you said up to the word centuries. I would give you decades, right?
Okay.
There's when people talk about, this is way off socialism now, but as we're in a chat, it's good faith. When people say like the knock-on effects of slavery and things like this, America's been basically declared bankrupt twice since then. I'm not sure. And as I say, when I look back to like the 50s, 60s, black people were doing a lot better, and the distance between whites and blacks was very narrow until the implementation of the drug laws, which I think really, really hurt them. So I give a lot of credence to things like Jim Crow, which is Cornel West's position. I think he's right on that Jim Crow is something that, you know, the black community does have a genuine grievance towards. And as I say, I'm very much against the drug war, and I think if you could, get rid of the drug war and do some form of reparations towards,
it would do a lot of good.
Jim Crow, that would do a lot of good. But I don't give any credence to the idea that slavery is still doing damage to people, because things were better for black people since then.
I mean, yeah, better for black people, but you can understand like the basic effect of like being able to pass wealth on for generations and not being able to benefit from that for centuries, right?
But this is what I'm saying. The country, the US, has been bankrupt basically twice since then with major wars and stuff. So everyone was dirt poor. Like I will agree that the few people who were rich at the time were white, right? Who emerged from those systems rich were white, but I don't think that the average white person was rich.
I mean, again, I would have to look at data to tell you, no, you're wrong, but I have a very deep suspicion that you are not correct on this point. But
I don't mean it sarcastically. I would genuinely love to, because if I'm wrong, then that's how I find out, is by talking to people who disagree and know better.
I just don't have the info, but yeah.
Yeah, no. I want to circle back to something that you said earlier. Bother.
Socialism?
Pick it up now. Sorry. Yeah, something around that. I got distracted by chat was my problem.
Oh, yeah, don't look at chat while we're talking.
Yeah, there was a mistake. It was because the name that I know flicked up. It's someone I follow was saying that
Beyonce
was making bad faith comments about me because they don't know that I'm a follower of theirs and that we chat. Because they've never heard my voice.
Aww.
So that's what happens when you chat shit. Which is a shame, because I thought we were having a decent conversation.
I mean, I think we are.
Yeah, well, I agree. Sorry, I shouldn't allow people to distract me. with my white supremacy showing, apparently. Yeah, let's try and tail it back to socialism. So I wanted to say, wanted to ask you sort of, no, it's going to elude me. Shall we leave it there for tonight? Hopefully we can pick it up another time.
Sure, if
Because
you'd
there were a
like.
couple of things you said that I wanted to look up, as you said. Oh, no, I've remembered. So you were saying about the Nordic countries having better social mobility.
Yeah.
Do you, where do you believe you've seen or heard that? Because I believe it is my current position that, again, I can't point to, or this is something I just like air quotes know, but I don't know why I know it, that America now is that, well, America pre-COVID is the #1 country in history to have social mobility. Like the idea that people can move up and down into and out of the 1%, up and down out of the bottom 15%, these things, that was my position. And if I'm wrong, that would be awesome to know.
Sorry, some people just sent me something in chat. I don't think it actually has anything to do with what you're talking about at the moment.
No worries.
I thought it did. I was excited, but let me just take a quick look at Google.
You're supposed to be our, you're supposed to be our stat finders to prove what an idiot I am.
But let me just take a look real quick, if you don't mind.
No, not at all. I've got another 18 odd hours to stay awake to try and reset my sleep schedule, so.
Okay, well that's good, I guess.
Yeah.
Kind of, maybe. Let's see. This is extremely hard to read. They picked the worst font for this study. I can't. I'm not going to read this right now.
No worries.
Here we go.
Hey, if you'd like to pick this up another time when you do have some of this stuff to hand, if you wanted to, that'd be awesome.
But yeah, I guess my general thesis, not having this in front of me, is that I think that we would have more economic mobility if people didn't have to either work or die under a capitalist system.
What do you mean, or die? Where did that come from? That was a bit of...
Well, I mean, like, if you don't work under a capitalist system, you essentially become homeless, right? And then die.
But wouldn't anyone under any system? Isn't that part of sort of what you're still arguing for? Doesn't require nobody to work, right?
Right.
People need to work for the things that you would rather be funded by the government than to be funded by the individual.
A market socialist system, at least what I would advocate for, you would have worker co-ops, right? And then you would have a decommodified system wherein, like, housing would be provided if you're homeless. You also get water, electricity, internet, food, like basic foodstuffs.
So what would incentivize people if you'll go for that kind of the cliche argument of where we probably break up there?
People would be incentivized to better their quality of life. And by, I think that humans tend to be extremely social creatures. So whether it's to help their communities, or out of pure curiosity to educate themselves and contribute in that way. I
so
think...
do you believe, because I don't want to put it to that's why I'll keep asking, do you believe that there are people who would work to better themselves if given, you didn't actually use any terms, so I don't know what to put in here, sort of the bare necessities, the healthcare, housing, food. You believe if you gave them those things, people would be added to the workforce rather than taken out by not having to work for those things.
Right. And like when I say decommodify housing, I don't mean decommodify all housing. For example, like you want to live in a better house, you want to buy a plot of land, or the fenced in, the white picket fence with the dog, get a job at a worker co-op,
Right.
You have a great idea of how you want to benefit society. You can start your own worker co-op in that way. You want to go to school and become a doctor so you can help people. Well, you have the option to pay for like Harvard or whatever, a prestige university, or you can go to a public education system that takes you up through college.
So do you not think a lot of people would not be incentivized to work, like a disproportionately large number to the number that you would be helping?
I think that most people seek meaning in life and that meaning in life would be more than just like staring at a wall in a small apartment. I think people would want to go out and be social. I think people would want to buy video games, art to make their lives richer and better. And I think that those could be enough of an incentive. I don't think we need the incentive of
Sure, sorry,
being able to pay your rent every month, you know?
But so my question
Hmm.
is the different people, right? If we try and break them up into different types of people, so if we
Hmm.
say that there is ridiculously hardworking genius entrepreneurs, and I do not think those two terms are the same thing. I'm putting them in the same category,
Hmm.
who under both systems are going to work, right?
Yeah.
And you're saying there's a people at the bottom who, if we can provide for them some bare necessities so they aren't scraping by, they would be more incentivized to work than they currently are.
Yeah.
Is that fair? And I'm saying there is a middle group who currently do work in order to, as you say, strive for these things that we were already discussing. But if you provided for some of them, they would just simply work less. And I
I
think that where we might be having a disconnect is I'm saying that second group or the middle group
mhm.
is far larger. The people you would lose is far larger than the people you would help.
I mean, I think with the advent of like automation, it's okay if we work less. What
Oh, absolutely.
I would
Yeah.
just say maybe there's a good argument to be made that we shouldn't be working 40 hours a week or more, you know? The reason we do that now is largely to benefit large corporations, right? Like maybe we find a better way to distribute work. You have
So,
more free time to pursue what you want to do.
right. And this is why we might be having a geographical difference. Do you think that most, because I actually don't know if there is a difference, do you think that most homeless people are homeless because they can't find homing? And obviously, let's talk pre-COVID, because I think we're in exceptional circumstances. We'd
Hmm.
probably both agree.
Yeah. Although I do think that the sign of how many people have been left homeless by COVID points out just how precarious most people's lives are, and I think it would be good if we could alleviate at least some of that stress. Like
Oh
stress
yeah, I
doesn't
think.
make people better workers.
I mean, for me, it shows the weakness of the fiat currency system, but that's a whole different issue.
Maybe. But I largely think that a lot of people are homeless not because they want. I don't think anyone wants to be homeless. I think a lot of people are subject to mental disabilities who wind up homeless because of the precariousness of our system. I think there are a lot of people who are unable to find work because of a cyclical nature of their homelessness. For example, it's much harder to present yourself as a professional if you are struggling to maintain shelter. Um, I think all of these things kind of compound on themselves. It makes it harder to get a job. Not impossible, but harder, you know?
Yeah.
And
Well, I'm going to talk entirely. I'm going to make a point that I'm talking entirely to my experience, so that
yeah.
I'm not trying to be like, oh, it's true for me, therefore it's true everywhere. But my experience of that is the exact opposite.
Hmm.
So the reason I didn't give my name at the start wasn't to not be rude, is because I've run for office in the
Oh,
UK a few times, so I
congrats.
am involved in politics. Thank you. And I'm just not particularly interested in doxing myself on stuff I might say sleep deprived at 6 a.m.
Fair.
But so we've got quite a decent. It's definitely the wrong word. There you go. That's a perfect example. We've got quite a sizable homeless problem in the area of London that I live.
Hmm.
And so when I was running for office, it was something I obviously got very interested in seeing how could we help out. And the vast majority, and I would say easily 3/4, easily of the
Hmm.
homeless people who live in the, well, you said the name, in the area of London that I live,
Hmm.
are voluntary homeless. We couldn't get them off the street when we offered them a place to stay.
Did they say why?
No, a lot of them just preferred that lifestyle. Now, I would agree that, well, I think what you were saying, that they might prefer it because of mental health issues, and so they are making poor choices. And I would
Hmm.
agree with that, but I don't know how giving them a house solves that issue, because they return to the previous lifestyle.
Yeah, I think that one of the benefits of that we've seen with like the limited amount of decommodification projects we've seen when it comes to housing in individual cities around the world, there are a number of studies about this, is that usually when you're able to give um, decommodified homes to people, um, housing for the homeless, I guess is another way of putting it, um, you can provide social services within that. I guess, bureaucratic structure that makes that possible. So mental health services, other like social services to help them find jobs or whatever, help them succeed essentially. And so I think that, and also generally it's been shown that like, you know, if you're able to get them off the street, it gets them in better physical health as well. So they're less of a drain on like, you know, they aren't going into the emergency room as a last resort. They can just go to the hospital for like preventative care and all kinds of benefits that reaps. So largely, I think that there are a lot of benefits to this that are knock-on effects of giving people homes. And it's largely why I advocate for it. I'm sure that there would be a small number of people who would willingly continue to choose to be homeless. But I largely think if we have an established program that's proven and well known and respected, that people would eventually voluntarily go in. Because right now, someone approaches you on the street, tells you, "I have a free home for you," from the government. Like, there are a lot of people who are going to react to that with some suspicion, you know. And
why do you think that? Sorry, I didn't follow the logic there at the end.
I think, at least in America, there's an extreme amount of suspicion when it comes to the government offering you something like that, especially if it seems like there are no strings attached. So I think
I'm no fan of the government, obviously, from what I said at the start.
Yeah.
But what would the suspicion be? What would the reservation be?
A lot of homeless people and in general like disadvantaged communities tend to view government interference with suspicion.
I mean, I view government interference with suspicion.
Right. So like, you know, they don't know your actual intentions is all I'm saying.
Right.
So like, if you can run an established program for people who are willing to, you know, give up being homeless for whatever advantage they get from that, I think eventually you can win people over in that way.
I think where we therefore might be disagreeing, as I say, I think the government is I think we're agreeing on, you know, getting homeless off the street and getting them help is a good thing. I think we're both universally agreeing that.
Yeah.
But I would say the government is possibly the worst way you could try and achieve that goal. That would be where we might then have a big separation again, which brings us back to sort of the original discussion I would have thought.
And why do you say that?
Because I believe the government is almost the worst way of doing almost everything.
But why?
A history of anything pointed at any issue. So like Americans often resent their healthcare, right? Whereas this is going to get your chat going wild, I'm imagining. I would say it is almost unquestionable fact that America has the best healthcare in the world.
True. America does in fact have the best healthcare in the world, if you can pay for it.
No, I think even when you can't, people. I get why you're saying that, but I think when people point to like Canada, the UK, a lot of Europe, right, and they say these places have socialized medicine, why can't we? There you go. Here comes the laughs. I don't think most of those people have ever dealt with UK health services. You know, they point to like the NHS and say, "Can we have that?" And you go, "You really don't want it." And the existence of the NHS literally means that we can't get access to private healthcare at a reasonable price. Well, like our private healthcare is way more expensive than your private healthcare. That's a thing a lot of Americans don't realize.
I imagine. I just think most Americans would probably trade in, you know, a slight dip in quality in exchange for.
Oh, it's not a slight dip. You know, we're talking people dying, like straight up, without being like.
Yeah, but we're also talking about people dying in this system. Like we have a system where people are afraid to call ambulances or will refuse medical treatment from ambulance officials.
No, I agree that's ridiculous and gone too far the other way. Like, I agree. I think that's partially, you know, there's government protections over who can and can't provide these types of services. And I think that's wrong. You know, I think we need to open it more to the free market, not less.
Well, I don't necessarily know that the free market provides the solution to that, because right now we already have a free market when it comes to insurance and when it comes to private hospitals and stuff like that. And largely what happens is these companies hike up their prices every year and pocket the extra money. So their profits keep going up and up and up, but the costs on the consumer keep going up as well. So now we have a system wherein you have to have insurance, because if something bad happens to you, and it will, if you don't have insurance, then your surgery or whatever is going to cost you $20,000.
But I
And
can have it.
well, but most people in the United States don't have that kind of money to have these surgeries.
But
Like
what I'm saying is,
most people,
in the UK, so
right?
you're saying in America, let's take a random theoretical medical procedure
Hmm.
that most people can't access because it's too expensive, and then there are people who can afford $20,000 for the procedure. I'm saying in the UK, almost nobody can get it, and I would say it was less people than who can afford it in the US. Does that make sense? Now I understand that that is a unfair way of breaking it up by who can
Yeah,
afford it and who can't, but I also think at random and less people is literally worse.
I think though that your system eventually gets around to the people who need the surgeries on a case by case basis. Whereas in this system, if you're poor, they literally won't treat you. They'll kick you out of the hospital if you don't have enough money. And most
See, I
people
disagree. I
most
disagree with the comment that they will get around to treating you. That's the bit that I disagree with.
well, but most people in the United States only have $400 to spend on unexpected expenses. So like most people, if they get hit by a car or something, can't actually afford to use the hospital.
Right?
It here and like in your view, I guess that's fine,
No,
but
no, no.
like
What I'm saying is, if we're talking about a comparative situation, I'm saying in the UK the same.
so you're saying
I,
if I got
my claim is that more people cannot access the operation here. That's my claim.
so you're saying if you got hit by a car in the UK, there's a chance they just wouldn't see you?
No, short-term care. It's start of life care, end of life care, and births is what the NHS was in theory started for. Sorry, not birth. Getting you back to work were the three things they set up the NHS to do. They were supposed to dissolve it after that, but let's not go down that whole
Yeah.
rabbit hole. But so things like getting hit by a car, the emergencies type stuff, they will tend to treat you for, but they'll tend to send you on your way without very good care. They'll set your bone and stuff, which I understand.
Hmm.
The American viewpoint would be, well, we all want that. We all want our leg set. But on the reverse is in America, way more people will get treated for cancer than the UK will. And I also think there's a massive factor that tends to get ignored, which is the rest of the world is exploiting America for healthcare, which is you guys as the private and as the people with a free market towards healthcare, you invent all the medicine and then we just steal it, which is blatantly immoral.
Well, and that's one of my other major problems is that you say we invent the medicine. It's not the free market that's inventing the medicine. It's the government giving grants to these private companies. So in my view,
Yeah.
why do
So again, the issue is the government. That's what I said.
well, yeah, but that's my point. Like, why don't we just save the money and have the government do it?
Well, I would say do also to give it to the free market, which is always more efficient than the government.
I mean, I disagree. I think that the government is really efficient about a lot of things, like building roads. Um, for example, like some of the biggest civic projects in history are still standing today in America from like 60, 70, 80 years ago. And comparatively, like a lot of the private projects tend to crumble over shorter periods of time because companies are incentivized to save money any way they can, and that can include when it comes to building materials.
But they
Um,
get replaced by other private things. Is that
well,
not
no,
your point, or am I missing your point?
they wind up getting replaced by the government. Like the government comes in to subsidize these private companies. That's my issue is that um, we could be just doing all of this far more efficiently with government intervention. Like, for example,
That
with health.
sentence blows my mind.
Well,
Sorry.
for example, with private healthcare, right? Like,
Yeah,
the government can come in and just be like, okay, we're gonna have a socialized program. Then the government can collectively bargain on behalf of 300 million people, and that's far more efficient than having four companies that are being run for millions, hundreds of millions, if not
but
billions of dollars of
it's not
profit.
gonna.
Like we're like the profit's coming directly from the people who are paying for it. So why not
They're
just
not. They're not going to negotiate better than people negotiating by paying with their dollar on the individual level, right?
yeah,
When the free
like
market allows things to happen
the,
rather than the
the
government.
the
You think
government the government
finds the sort of the equilibrium point better than the free market does?
I think the government can operate without having to return a profit, and the government can operate without having to have a marketing budget, and that saves an awful lot of money, right? Like how much does the private healthcare industry in the United States make every year, right? Like, it's astronomical. Because who's not going to pay for their healthcare, right? Um, so yeah, I think that you
Well,
can
I think
save
a
a
lot of
whole lot
people
of.
would if you gave them the opportunity.
Well, yeah, but then they're fucked if they get in an accident, and that's bad because it eventually it costs all of us money because it takes up room in hospitals, takes up resources at hospitals, and oftentimes those hospitals are
But why,
public institutions.
why would it cost you money and take up your resource? Sorry, I didn't follow that.
Oh, because there are hospitals that are that are public institutions, so they're supplied by the government.
But wait, so we're talking about, so if people got to choose their own healthcare completely
Right.
freely, and people voluntarily said, I don't want any healthcare, and then they got hit by something,
Hmm.
they wouldn't take up any of your resources because they wouldn't take any. Because their allocated sort of self-insurance policy was none. That's what you said. They took out
Right, but
no healthcare, right?
hospitals still take them in to treat them. So, like, for
But I'm
example,
saying, why would they do that? If it was a private
because they're
institution, they would
required
not be.
to.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. It's a you're talking sort of in a current government mandate sort of system that I'm saying
Wait, so
move away from.
you're advocating if somebody chooses not to have insurance and they get hit by a car, they should just be left to die on the street?
I'm saying people shouldn't make terrible decisions like that.
How is getting hit by a car like a decision that someone actively makes?
No, not having any health cover is the terrible decision.
Right. So why don't we just give everyone insurance? It actively benefits society if everyone's cared for.
Do you think people are free to make bad choices for themselves?
Sure, but I also think that we have a duty to give the people of this country life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
Yeah, and so the life and liberty would be the freedom to not have that, to not make that specific choice, right?
I think that
This goes back to what we kind of started on with the sort of
right,
freedom to rather than freedom from, right?
right. I would argue that having the freedom to receive medical treatment is an inherently good thing. Most people
Sorry, say word for word again.
The freedom to receive medical treatment is.
See, I believe yes, you have the freedom to
right.
pursue medical treatment. You don't have the freedom to receive medical treatment. It's a big difference.
But it's a fact in the United States that for any reason you can refuse treatment. You can refuse to get treatment. So these people still have the right to not be treated.
Right, they're going to take it when they're in desperately, right? So what they should have done is make the better choice earlier.
But I would say that for many people, especially for the people who choose not to have insurance, it's not a choice that they make willingly. It's a choice that they make under coercion because they don't have the money to afford it. So it's not really a choice if you can't afford it, right? Like if you don't have the money to do it, you can't do it. And that's where a lot of people are. So is it really a choice if it's not even an option?
Well, no, but if it's not an option, then I'm not sure how they kind of play into the sort of two-sided discussion we're having, right?
Well, because I think that we should have healthcare for those people.
Oh, so do I. I want to be very specific. I'm not arguing against that. I'm just saying government's the bad way of running it. If you recall, that was my position. It wasn't that these people shouldn't have healthcare.
Right, but I guess
I believe a way more efficient and better way of funding this type of stuff is via private charity.
Wait, but why do you think that that's more efficient?
Because as I've said, I can't name a system that the government's ever run that is more efficient. Having worked in the government and knowing people that work in the government, like all the government, like you know the whole thing about like how much is it for the American?
But wait, why are you going?
Right?
But like, why are you going into the government? Why not go private if that's where you think you're like the true efficiency lies? Why waste your time?
First job out of university. I mean, we develop our opinions over time, right? I'm allowed. I'm allowed to have had experience and changed my mind over time.
Okay, so now you're going into private industry.
Oh, sorry. You're asking why am I trying to work into government? Why am I involved in politics? Sorry, I thought you were. No, sorry. Different misunderstanding. No, I'm trying to get involved in government to try and make the government smaller.
Okay.
Because sort of as you were saying, there are sort of two ways about going about that. There's the getting involved way and the violent way, and I'm hoping to not ever have to resort to the second option.
I gotcha.
That is literally my reason, is I want to shrink the UK government.
So, like, is your ideal scenario basically like no laws?
Oh, Christ, no.
To give people as much freedom as possible?
No, I'm a minarchist.
Yeah.
If you're familiar, I don't know.
I'm familiar, yeah.
Okay, cool. So that's basically my position: is the government needs to be in charge of giving us a universal set of laws. It's why I'm a constitutionalist and stuff like that. So no would be the simple answer to the laws question.
Okay. I guess, yeah, like our fundamental difference is that I think that we should provide things that allow people to achieve as much as possible. And your position is that is not something we should do. Or
No,
I
no,
guess
no,
your
not at all.
position
No.
is that the more efficient way of doing that is capitalism?
Yes, entirely. Yeah, that's
Okay.
entirely my position. I was about to say, let's not end on a harsh straw man, but no, I don't think we're doing it deliberately.
Yeah, I was not.
Okay.
Um,
Well, hey, look, it was really good chatting to you, and hopefully we
yeah,
can maybe pick it up another time.
for sure.
Maybe if we
Very good
we can chat
discussion.
off stream and say like, hey, let's talk about this topic, and we can both come to it with some resources ready, rather than being like, hey, I'm not sure about that. Let's and then move away from something.
Yeah, I
That'd be cool.
agree. Yeah.
But it was genuinely great to talk to someone on the other side and
Yeah.
have a civil conversation. It's very rare in this day and age, and we need more of it.
And hey, look.
Despite me being a white supremacist, a complete psychopath, all the other things that I've been reading.
And hey, look. If the revolution ever does happen, I'll keep you safe, comrade. Okay.
Hey, that'd be great. Thanks. Likewise. All right. Hey, thanks very much. Have a great night.
You too. Bye
Take
bye.
care.
Well, that was a delightful conversation. No, that was not Sargon. No. Gosh, I honestly, guys, I can't believe we're the top channel in politics. What the fuck? Are we still the top channel? What's everyone else doing? I don't understand. I did really enjoy that conversation. I enjoy talking with people who disagree with me and can be intelligent about it. Oh, the conservative streams are coping. Yeah, that's probably not something that a ton of people are interested in. But yeah, I mean, it's hard for me to argue, again, against people who take the position that, like, capitalism is heavily flawed, but it's the best one we have right now, especially given that, like, on a wide variety of things, it becomes hard to point to any real world examples of socialism in action on like a national level that gets through to people on the opposite side who take his stance. But I will say that largely I think that I am correct. So like the viewpoint that I take is generally that I know, weird, right? Like, oh, she's taking the stance where she thinks she's right. But my general idea and thesis is that I think I could work with someone like him, right? Like, I think I could work with someone like him, especially when it comes to worker co-ops. He seemed receptive to that idea. And I don't need to work with every single person on every single issue, right? So with someone who has a similar position to him, we can work with him on that, right? Like, we can work together on worker co-ops if that's something we can come to an agreement on. And I'm all for that. Aw, I'm glad you enjoyed this, Honk Donkler, and I really love saying your name, so thank you for being here. Thanks for the chat. Genuinely enjoyed it. Hope we can do it again. I love talking with everybody. Okay, and I'll talk with anyone. I had a heart to heart with a gentleman who hates women and wants to enslave them. So like I'll talk with anybody. Okay, and like again on very specific issues we could definitely work together. I think. Maybe not when it comes to decommodification, but I think maybe on select issues I could get you on that too, you know?